Since the dawn of man, our kind have been territorial creatures and need barriers to define our turf. This makes it easy to identify with our tribe and feel safe. History and its landscapes are littered with such obstructions, from medieval walled cities, the Great Wall of China, or even the Berlin Wall. These are all famous and world-renowned, but today we're covering a lesser-known and yet extraordinary barrier. If you were a traveler back in India in the 1870s, you would have come across a strange problem. You wouldn't be able to walk from the northwestern parts to the northeast regions of India without encountering an enormous hedge. This hedge was made of bamboo, prickly pear, coranda, and other shrubs. It was officially called the Inland Customs Line and started in Punjab, ran southeast in the precincts of Kanpur, and then swung south and turned east and stretching all the way to Sambalpur. The only way across was through the many police and custom gates posted every 5 kilometers along the line. Why was such a massive barrier erected, and how in the world did they build such a thing? In 1878, W.S. Halsey, Commissioner of Inland Customs, reported on the state of British-controlled India's giant hedge. The hedge had grown to more than 1,800 kilometers long. He wrote that more than half of the barrier was made up of perfect and good green hedge, or was combined with green and dry hedge, and in some parts it was 12 feet tall and some 14 feet across. At this point, the British Empire had been working on this giant hedge for the last 30 years, and it had at long last reached its greatest extent and perfection. The hedge was created by the British East India Company to prevent smugglers from crossing into Bengal. Curiously enough, the contraband they were trying to control wasn't opium, hashish, or even guns. It was actually salt. The East Indian Company, and later the British state, imposed a hefty tax on salt and thus needed to control its supply and movement. The British had been trying to build a wall for a while, but the scarcity of suitable stones to build a barrier was a major problem. This is what led to the ingenious solution of a hedgerow. As the British do, they worked on their hedgerow until it was a masterpiece. They dug ditches and brought in better soil. They built embankments to resist floods. They even experimented until they found the best trees for each of the many climates that the hedge passed through, and eventually it grew long, tall, and wide. It was described as a monstrous system. Each mile of the hedge required 250 tons of thorny brushwood and other organic material to create, and in 1 year, on average, they would need over 100,000 tons of plant matter to shore up stretches of the dry hedge. The creation was partnered with over 14,000 guards and hundreds of watchtowers to ensure security. At its peak, the hedge would help catch over 6,000 would-be smugglers in one full calendar year. For all its glory and unimaginable size, it was plagued with many issues that led to its downfall. White ants infested the hedge and could bring whole sections down. Bushfires incinerated miles at a time. Storms and whirlwinds could sweep parts of it away. Parasitic vines blighted the hedge, and the trees died of natural causes. One section even had rats living in it, and the patrol there introduced feral cats to combat them. For all that work, the hedge, like most fortified barriers, was only partially successful at stopping smugglers. There were gaps where no one could get plants to grow. Smugglers would even use the trees themselves as ladders. Sometimes they would even throw sacks of salt to collaborators on the other side. The maintenance of the hedge and enforcement of the line were constant struggles. For these reasons, the project was eventually abandoned at the turn of the 19th century and left for nature to take over. The hedge itself withered over time, but the path it cut through the country was preserved in a way. Later in India's history, road designers looked at the long, flat embankments that cut through the country as infrastructure assets. The hedge path was, in certain areas, transformed into a series of roads. Other than that, the Great Hedge of India leaves almost no trace because its history has been paved over. Thank you for watching today's video. If you have any suggestions for future ones, please leave it down in the comments, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one.